Five Nights at Freddy's is a game series originally created by independent game developer Scott Cawthon in 2014. The game consists of 11 games, 2 movies, and an extensive book series. The games were an instant hit with the public due to the game's survival horror mechanics and the simplicity of the gameplay. It's pretty simple. You play as a night guard at a restaurant in a kids' pizza party chain where the band of animatronic animal characters come to life, are trying to break into the security office to kill you, and you have to survive from 12 AM to 6 AM. Gothic theming in Five Nights at Freddy's has been something I've been meaning to discuss for a while now, due to the similarities that I've found between the game series and Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. These similarities I've found have been through the supernatural elements of creating life in a grotesque way and the themes of twisted parenthood. Many theorists online quickly caught on to the elements of a story that they could piece together as the game series developed with the second and third games, and fans were brought together at the prospect of theory hunting. In the background of the games, fans started to notice posters for missing children, multiple on-screen jump scares saying "It's me", and newspaper articles detailing an event that would be dubbed the Missing Children's Incident. In Five Nights at Freddy's, the animatronics are created by a character named William Afton, who ends up being the main antagonist of the series, coming back to life in numerous ways such as Springtrap, named in reference to the Springlock suit that he gets trapped in. Each of the 4 animatronic characters, Freddy, Bonnie, Chica and Foxy, contain the spirit of the missing children, after William Afton killed them and hid their bodies inside them. It's generally believed that the player experiences the majority of the games from the point of view of Michael Afton, William Afton's oldest son, going by the alias Mike Schmidt. Fans theorise that the Afton family consists of William Afton, the father, Michael Afton, the eldest son, Elizabeth Afton, the daughter, and Evan Afton, the youngest son, and the majority of the story revolves around said family. In 2015, a FNAF movie was teased by Warner Bros. Pictures before Blumhouse Studios took over the project in 2017, and the first film was eventually released in 2023 after being stuck in production limbo, with various directors joining and stepping away from the project for different reasons. The plot of the film follows Mike Schmidt, who is hired by William Afton as the nighttime security guard at Freddy's Pizzeria, and his younger sister Abby, who makes friends with the spirits trapped inside the animatronics. A local police officer, Vanessa, warns Mike about the location, and we later on learn that William Afton is Vanessa's father. The plot of the 2 films released so far is very different from the story that fans deciphered from the clues in the game series, and Scott Cawthon has received criticism for his writing skills in recent years, with the game series getting so long that some mysteries have been retconned or haven't got any payoff at all, and the general consensus among fans being that the story has become quite convoluted. This video aims to show what went wrong with the writing of the first 2 FNAF movies that have been released as of 2026, which resulted in them receiving poor critical reviews. I'll discuss how I would have rewritten the FNAF film series to incorporate more gothic themes, and with a plot more like the fan theories about the games, as I believe this would have made for a more compelling narrative overall. Gothic literature came about during the 18th century with the European intellectual movement of Enlightenment. The genre is known for moody settings, themes of decay and supernaturalism, and madness. The tone is dark, and stories usually focus on the more darker elements of humanity. Think Frankenstein, Dracula, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. The FNAF games, while having humorous elements and being widely regarded as a children's game series, do contain these gothic themes. This version of the story would revolve around William Afton's madness and the actions of his oldest son Michael trying to fix everything his father has created, incorporating themes of decay and psychological torment as William haunts his oldest son. The main inspiration for this idea came about from my learning about the FNAF fan game The Joy of Creation, or more so the title. The phrase "The Joy of Creation" came into the knowledge of FNAF fans in the form of the call made to the security office in the 5th night of the first game. This call, rather than a man's voice, plays a strange, garbled audio. The audio originates from an excerpt from the autobiography of a yogi by Paramhansa Yogananda, talking about how machinery can help with agriculture and increase human quality of life. This phrase was mistranslated when the audio was being deciphered, the original being, "The scientist seldom knows contemporaneous reward, it is enough to possess the joy of creative service." And becoming, "They will know the joy of creation." For myself, this quote, while mistranslated, perfectly encapsulates the idea of Gothic science fiction, or just science fiction by itself. Scientists creating just for the sake of experimentation with no reward for the possible consequences, and then falling victim to their own work in one way or another. This kind of thing can be seen in films like Jurassic Park, Ex Machina, and Blade Runner. There is usually a question of ethics that the scientists will ignore in favour of scientific progress, and by the end of the narrative they will usually pay for this disregard. The main piece of Gothic literature that relates to this phrase would be Frankenstein, the story of a scientist who has to deal with the consequences of unnaturally creating life. This is the first element that I believe missed the step in regards to the writing. In my opinion, the writers should have embraced the darker elements of the story to create more thrill plot-wise. Tapping into the mad scientist trope would have made for an interesting story, and given way to the father-son dynamic that I believe audiences and critics would have found more compelling. It has been proven time and time again throughout the history of cinema that stories pertaining to troublesome parental relationships are usually quite well received by audiences when done well due to their relatability. In Star Wars we had Luke and Darth Vader, and Luke's internal struggle with coming to terms with who his father was. In The Shining we had Jack and Danny, in a story showing an abusive side to fatherhood. In the FNAF movies we do get a parent-child storyline, but ultimately it is very poorly written. Vanessa's relationship with her father is complicated, but it has nothing to do with the characters. It is purely down to poor writing. She wants to protect people from him and wants him arrested, but does nothing about this other than being quite rude to Mike at times, and at one point throwing his medication away. Her character was one of 2 new additions to the lineup of main characters who do not appear in the game series, alongside Abby. There is a Vanessa in the games, but her character still remains somewhat of a mystery, and it is never implied in the games or any extra content from my knowledge that she is related to the Afton family. As I said before, the main criticism that the first movie received was, while it wasn't scary enough for a film based on a horror game series, it also took itself way too seriously for what the film's premise was. To put it simply, if you're going to make a film about ghost children possessing robot animals, you have to work in extremes. There's no room when working with a series like this to be doing plain and uninspired jump scares. It's a go big or go home kind of situation. One example of poor writing in the series is William Afton. He is shown across both films to be a relentless child murderer, but there is no reason given behind why he is doing that. He's shown kidnapping children, luring them away from their parents and families, and then implied murders are done off screen. A more Gothic retelling would give a reason for his actions. The main piece of Gothic literature in which my retelling of Five Nights at Freddy's would revolve around would be Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. Parallels can be drawn between the novel and the theorised story put together by fans, from the dangers of unchecked ambition to the themes of corrupted and unconventional parenthood. In my retelling, he would be driven by mad from grief after the loss of his youngest son at the hands of his eldest, Mike, and would start inventing more and more dangerous animatronics in an attempt to bring his son back to life. He tries to recreate the incident with different children by creating the circus baby animatronic, an animatronic designed to capture children in a cavity in its chest. This backfires when his daughter Elizabeth gets caught by the animatronic, further fueling the flames of Afton's madness. In this, the characters from the original game series are kept in, and the beginnings of the father-son conflict are shown, with William blaming Michael for his brother's death and possibly even disowning him over this. The story would then, from Mike's point of view, show the journey of undoing the terrible deeds of William Afton as he goes on a rampage, designing animatronics that end up ultimately leading to his downfall. Victor Frankenstein and his monster share a twisted father-son relationship that goes against the known laws of nature. This can easily be reflected in both William Afton and his unhealthy relationship with his children, and the relationship he has with his animatronics. In a gothic, more horror-oriented version of the story, there would perhaps be a scene where he tries to put the bodies of his son and daughter inside the animatronic suits that killed them in a way to fuse them with the robots and bring them back to life somehow. This would be a callback to the original FNAF game, where it is said that the children from the missing posters were put into the animatronic suits to hide them from the police. Resolution of generational trauma is a theme that is especially prominent in Guillermo del Toro's 2025 film adaptation of Frankenstein. Del Toro has a tradition of incorporating father-son stories into his film adaptations, and his version of the story explicitly highlights the abusive dynamic between Victor Frankenstein and his father, and how this is perpetuated through Victor and the monster. This relationship is further reflected in Five Nights at Freddy's, with Michael and William Afton. William blames Michael for the death of Evan Afton, despite him only being a child when it happened, and would take out his anger on him over this. A gothic retelling of this story, incorporating elements of the traditional hero's journey, would follow Michael's attempt at uncovering his father's creation and putting an end to his torment. The final point of change that would be made to these films lies in the fear factor of the series as a whole. The jump scares, when there are any, are dull and uninspired. As said before, with a series like this, it's a go big or go home situation. The animatronics are underutilised as a whole, when their unsettling designs and the sheer scale of them compared to the main cast of characters sets the table for something a lot bigger. Both films overall did terribly with critics, but well with pre-existing fans of the IP, a problem that most film adaptations of video games face, and most critics believe that the film should have been a lot scarier than it actually was, calling the horror baseline and childlike. This was in part due to a large section of the FNAF fanbase being children. The studios would have wanted to keep the age rating of the film as low as possible to maximise audience scales, so there is minimal gore and frightening scenes do not last as long as they need. Films with a higher age rating will produce less revenue for media conglomerates at the box office, so it is in their best interest to keep the age rating as low as possible. Taking a gothic view on the series gives way for many classical horror elements to shine through. The supernatural horror and immorality of a mad scientist based on Victor Frankenstein should evoke feelings of dread and revulsion that audiences should be experiencing whilst watching a horror movie. The setting of the FNAF games perfectly sets up an eerie atmosphere and isolated locations whilst diving into nostalgia with the dilapidated and rundown kids' party venues and old equipment that the player is forced to use. Where the movie series should have taken advantage of this better, it instead spends a lot of time in random other locations with characters who provide little interest for the audience. Isolation and confinement are large themes throughout Gothic works. Frankenstein's monster spends roughly 11 months to a year watching the DeLacy family, but never interacting with them. In my retelling of the Five Nights at Freddy's movies, the story would tap into what exactly it feels like to spend a night alone in an abandoned building, and what that would do to one's psyche. Michael Afton would have to face mental and physical challenges in this way, reckoning with his past as his father's creations attempt to attack him. In the FNAF movies, a lot of the time characters spend is with other people, often teaming up to accomplish their goals, sometimes with the animatronics. The animatronics in these films are not utilised well, as they are shown to be friends with the character Abby, removing most of their fear factor surrounding them. The animatronic animals, designed and constructed by Jim Henson's Creature Shop, are tall and stocky, with large piercing eyes that evoke the same feeling of being watched by a painting. They have exposed wires and constantly give the impression through their design that they could immediately overpower anyone. These design choices would work well in a gothic horror film series, using psychological methods to strike fear into the audience. These all would make for great sub-antagonists in the film series, making way for William Afton in an eventual emotional showdown between father and son. The FNAF films are by no means the worst films in the world, however there is a lot of room for improvement plot-wise, and I believe that the many changes to the script that were done between 2017 and 2020 are a big reason why so many directors decided to leave the project. Cawthon himself has said that he had a script written, Jason Blum liked it, and Chris Columbus liked it too, but he tossed it because he had a different idea, one that he liked better. Due to these films being marketed towards a younger audience, the majority of the IP is wasted, as the horror elements that brought most of the charm to the game series are let go of in favour of references to memes. Rather than this coming across as sincere, it feels disappointing considering the fact that this is an adaptation of one of the largest horror game franchises ever created. While there is still so much room for improvement with the Five Nights at Freddy's film series, there will likely be little improvement made. While critically they have been received poorly, the audience reception of the films has been positive overall. A third film has already been put in the works, with the second film making $237 million at the box office on a budget of $50 million.